Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome to Q&A, the show where I take your questions from YouTube and Twitter and answer them here in video format. After what happened on Sunday, the loss versus the Steelers, and obviously the big game versus the Cincinnati Bengals coming up this week, a ton of questions asked in response to what happened against the Steelers, what needs to change before the next game. So we're just going to jump right into it with a question from Wes on Twitter, who says, do you think the Browns should change their scheme to target Odell more or trade him for a younger wide receiver that would be up and coming like a Donovan Peoples-Jones, assuming that would be possible? Now, just assuming that would be possible, I don't really think that's a move that could be made. And by the time this video is out, I'm pretty sure the trade deadline will be around. So if something happens, it happens. But here's the weirdest thing about the Browns and the Browns offense, right? Usually when we're talking about a player or a star player holding back the offense, it's usually because that star player commands the amount of targets that star player used to get, right? The issue isn't that that star player is on the team. It's more or less because he's that star player, he gets 10, 15 targets. And since he's not playing at that level anymore, he's just not as productive with those targets. And that becomes an issue. It's like when a shooter starts shooting good in basketball, but he still takes the same amount of shots, it becomes an issue. So that's usually how these things go. The issue, though, for the Browns and Odell Beckham is reverse. Odell's still getting open. The targets aren't coming. And the one time they gave him like 8 or 9 targets, he had 7 receptions for about 78 yards. So he was good when you gave him the targets. I watch the film every week. He's open a lot. Like, he's not open every play. He's not 2015 or 16 Odell Beckham, but he's certainly a hell of a lot more open than his targets do warrant. Like, that is a real conversation. So what should the Browns do? Like, honest to goodness, you don't need to change your scheme around to target Odell more. You just need to have some emphasis and realize he's a star player. Key case and example, Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb does not have an issue getting carries in this offense because they realize there's a sense of urgency and an emphasis on getting the ball to Nick Chubb. And that's why Nick Chubb will always get his carries, will always get his touches, because they treat him like a star player. In this offense, they don't treat Odell as if he's a star player, so he doesn't get targets, so he doesn't get looked at, and he doesn't get the production that he could get you. And I think that's honestly what's holding back this offense more than anything, is the outright refusal to target Odell Beckham for whatever reason, whether that is Baker Mayfield or Kevin Stefanski. Like, come on, man. I understand he has had some drop issues. I know that there's some people in Cleveland just dead set against the ideal of Odell being a Cleveland Brown, and they've been against it for like 2.5 years now. I'm not really talking to those people. They're going to think what they think, but I'm really more addressing the people who are wondering what's going on with this offense. And that's one part of it, right? The fact that they're not going downfield. Well, who's their best downfield target? Odell. Why aren't they targeting him? And his lack of production, honestly, seems more like a symptom of the problems on the offense rather than the cause. So maybe giving him more targets could work out. There's some reasons why they don't go down the field. Like the offensive line play hasn't been great. But still, you got to work ways to stretch the ball, especially when you have somebody like Odell. And not once since Odell has gotten here has a offensive coordinator, specialized or emphasize Odell as if he was this big piece. It's always kind of been like, oh yeah, Odell's on the roster. And I think that's really a miss for the Cleveland Browns, whoever's the coach. I think that's a miss. I think you could have gotten a lot more out of Odell than what you got here. I think this is just going to go down as a huge miss, because I think he would go somewhere else and he would be pretty good because he's still playing at a high level. The next question comes from Craig, who says, could working out of the hurry-up offense more often get these guys out of their heads a bit? Do you think it would help at all? I would hope so. Sometimes like the hurry up becomes a cheat code and it does kind of help out guys. But with as sloppy as this team has been, man, I don't know if you would even trust him to run the hurry up. And honestly, like the last few weeks, some of these 2-minute drills have been so awfully executed that I wouldn't want to go into a hurry up voluntarily with this team. And also, you got to think about the defense, right? The hurry up is great, but what we learned with Chip Kelly is that you can do it to a point to where you're just going to destroy your defense. And that's usually what happens. The Browns defense, it's good, but it's not great. And it's definitely not going to withstand that kind of abuse if they're out on the field a ton, especially if you're running those hurry up offenses, you're executing sloppily. And then what happens? You get 3 and outs. Nah, it's not going to cut it. Next question comes from Matt, who says, Quincy, with the season not going as planned so far, the offense isn't clicking, what is the biggest change we need? I know we got the players. Please people stop blaming Baker. He's not the issue. Look, man, I love Baker Mayfield as much as anybody else. I don't think Baker is the main part of the issue. I think he's more of a symptom of a bigger issue going on with the team, to be honest with you, more than he is the issue itself. I think the issue has been somewhere between Alex Van Pelt and Kevin Stefanski. There's something there in the game planning and the game calling that is just bad right now. So yeah, I think the biggest change you can make is maybe trust your playmakers more. I mean, throw some 50-50 balls, let some plays be made. Like the one thing I gave Case Keenum credit for when he was out there was he was willing to give up a 50-50 ball. I think that needs to be something that Baker does. That's something that Baker could do. He has the control to do when he has the ball in his hands, that he should do more. I think so much of this offense is too worried about a turnover, too worried about a mistake, that you end up living in your fears, is an old Todd Haley saying. And look, Todd Haley, his tenure wasn't great in Cleveland, nor was it in Pittsburgh for some years at least. But I think there is some truth to that, right? When you live in your fears, you're more likely to get those fears be realized, right? If you're thinking about getting injured doing something, that's how you usually get injured. And that's what the Browns are worried about. They're worried about these turnovers. They're worried about these mistakes. They're worried about these little things. And then they're doing it because they're thinking about it so much. I mean, I don't really think the issue with this team is anything physically, anything with the personnel, and not even so much with the overall philosophy of the offense. It's really all mental with this team, and it's really frustrating to watch because when it's mental, there's no easy fix. The next question comes from Lydia, who says, what adjustments have you seen Stefanski and the coaching staff make coming into the 21 season, and so on and so forth? I'm assuming the biggest adjustment this offense can make is taking more risk. He's going downfield. He's doing a little bit of gambling, right? We know that Baker Mayfield is not incapable of getting the football to wide receivers. And what I mean by that is not like trying to be a smart ass or anything. I legitimately am trying to make a point of Baker. We know he can spread the ball out to a bunch of different wide receivers. His 2 best years, 2018, 2020, he did that a ton, right? He spread the ball out. It's the biggest thing with Baker Mayfield. We know that Baker Mayfield is capable of executing in the red zone. We know this because of 2018 and 2020. But this year, he seems handcuffed. He seems like there's less choice that he can make, or maybe what's happening is he's having paralysis by overanalysis, right? Where since he knows the offense so well, since he knows he has so many options, it's overwhelming him. That could be something that's going on there as well. Or even with Kevin Stefanski, right? Last year, limited season, didn't really have the full playbook available to him, so he had to hone in on some specific concepts. And this year, he had the whole playbook open to him, and it's pausing the team because there's too much to think about at one time because they know too much. I don't know if there is a hard fix that I could suggest for this team. It's not like the defense where there are some like legit adjustments that you could suggest that could and have a history of fixing some of the problems the Browns have. Right now, the Browns' problems are really almost theoretical to a point, and it's hard to really come up with the issue, or I mean, come up with anything that's going to legitimately be helpful in that situation, just because I have no idea what specifically is causing these issues. The next question comes from Corey, who says, what, in your opinion, are the Browns' playoff hopes? Who are the teams we have to cheer on against in order to take a wild card seed? I mean, honestly, look, it's week 8. At this point of the season, look, until like 4 or 5 weeks from now after the bye week, that's when you start doing that kind of thing. But you got to figure out where you're going to be at that point, right? You know, we'll worry about December when December comes. But right now, the Browns need to worry about each game in front of them. The next question comes from Michael Stone, who says, hey, Q, was wondering if you had seen the play calling going away from the hot hand quite often, whether it's tight ends or Baker. Yeah, they do that all the time. They did that last year. Now, this isn't a new thing. They did that last year as well, and it drove me crazy, but they were winning games, so it drove me less crazy. This year, they're doing it, and now they're not winning games, so obviously the problems are compounding on itself. But yeah, this is something that they don't do often. And again, the only player that gets this luxury on the team is Nick Chubb. And that's fine, right? Nick Chubb's a legitimate star player. But again, you have more star players on this team that deserve, you know, I'm not trying to say it like a star treatment, but that respect in the offense, that emphasis of they're having a good game, let's go with them, right? You know, David Njoku is somebody who has had multiple good games, but we've gone away from him in the red zone. I don't understand that. Baker Mayfield, look, we know that Baker Mayfield can carry you in certain situations, or even if he's just having a big game, right? When Baker's having a hot game, he can definitely carry this team, but sometimes he'll have the hot hand, but we won't go with them. And we'll go with the running game, which has been cold. It's a combination of over-reliance on just fear of turnover, over-reliance on the run game, and an over-reliance on play action passing, to the point to where when one thing's not working, it really freezes the offense. And right now, to be honest with you, this offense, more than anything, just feels lost. It feels like it doesn't have an identity because, yeah, the rushing numbers are great, but again, like, the cumulative numbers tell one story. But we know, because we've been watching this team, that the run game has not been as automatic as it used to be, right? We used to talk about this run game as something that would bully off the line of scrimmage, that was a guaranteed 4.5 yards each play. Now we're talking about which run play they called on a 4th and 1 because we couldn't get 1 yard with Nick Chubb. That's really the issue, right? The run game hasn't been what it is. That threw off the whole identity, and now their over-reliance on the run game is being exposed because it weakens everything else when you're not able to run at that insane clip that they were able to run at last year. So maybe they got to adjust. Maybe they have to lean on other pieces here or there. But it's all starting to kind of break down with how they structured this offense, and they need to kind of add more pillars. They have more stars, so add more pillars to this offense. Because right now it's literally on one, and that's the run game. And you notice the games where they have 130-yard rushers, they have good games offensively, right? The Chargers, they had a 130-yard rusher in Nick Chubb, good game. The Broncos, they had a 130-yard rusher with Dearness Johnson, good game. But when they ain't getting that kind of rush, the Chicago game, the Minnesota game, the offense looks like absolute dookie because they're overly reliant on this run game, and they need to add more pillars. And to me, again, the point I'm making is that you have more pillars. You should add those to the offense, but they kind of don't want to do that, which is what it is. Next question comes from Michael, who says, hey, Q, why is there such a lack of diversity in the play call? I think I kind of covered this in the last question, but I'll reiterate it. The lack of diversity in play calling is because, they think that they could solve everything with the run game, and they're over-reliant on the run game. And when the run game is not going at that historical clip that it went last year, their over-reliance on it gets exposed. And that's why when the Cardinals came to town, they were able to run 6-2 against the Browns, and it worked because the Browns have been overly reliant on the run game. They need to adjust. The next question comes from Pee Wee Great, who says, in regards to Baker's contract, since he is struggling this season due to injury and other circumstances, is it possible that Barry will look to sign him after next season, considering he's under control to the end of 2022 and 23? I don't know what kind of games Barry's going to play with Baker Mayfield and his contract. We'll see what happens going forward. I think this is possibly leading to a very unfortunate situation to where the Browns could let a good quarterback walk because, they're not necessarily, I don't want to say they're not putting them in a good situation because they have put them in a good situation, especially Andrew Barry. But right now, you need to see, hey, is Baker going to be somebody who's going to be able to uplift the team if given the opportunity? And you're just not giving him the opportunity to do that. We're kind of afraid of giving him that opportunity. And if that's how they're going to treat him, if that's how they see him internally, they're probably not going to give him a big extension, which means he can walk. Now, whether I believe he's that kind of quarterback or not, I think you give him the ball, you let him be Baker Mayfield, he's going to be pretty good for you. And somebody's going to luck into a good quarterback. But, hopefully things change at the second half of this season and the Browns get to slinging it and they start to win a ton of games, but we'll see, man. I don't know what the contract situation is. It's unfortunate. The next question comes from Adam, who says, what's up, Q? I've been complaining about the play calling and scheme for a while. Do you think Stefanski tells Bakers that long throws are third and fourth reads, thus resulting in them being an afterthought? Most plays, Baker doesn't even look at Odell. Do you think Baker is gun shy? Much love. This is something that I don't know is a Baker problem or a Kevin Stefanski problem. But we've seen it with Baker before. We saw it last year at the beginning of the season, not at all at the end of the season, but we saw it at the beginning of the season where he would pat the ball and pump fake as if he wants to throw it, but he doesn't trust it. Right. And we credited a lot of that to, he's not used to the offensive line being good enough for him to step in there. Now, to his credit this week, I actually did feel like he was more ready to go and pull the trigger and rip it downfield than he was in previous week. The problem this week was that nobody was catching the ball, to be honest with you. Like, I thought this was a lot like the Oakland Raiders game, the Las Vegas Raiders game last year, right? Where Baker had a good game, but everybody was dropping, so it didn't look like it on paper. But yeah, let's talk about that part of it. I don't know. So the whole thing where I don't know what that is with Baker. I know it's something he overcomes pretty regularly, but it also comes back all the time. I don't know if he's being coached a certain way to where he's not supposed to rip it, if he's not being encouraged, if every time he does throw the ball downfield and complete it, they're telling him to be smart, which is reinforcing some kind of insecurity. I have no idea what's going on with that, right? Because Baker is not somebody who came out of college as gun shy. He was not gun shy his rookie year, but 2019, after all them interceptions, it seemed to be gun shyness is a little bit of an issue. And again, Baker is not a great quarterback when he's gun shy. He's pretty average when he's gun shy. When Baker Mayfield is the dude that we all want to get behind is when he's slinging it, when he's ready to shoot. And that's the guy that he was at the end of 2020. And that's a guy that I felt like for the most part in this Pittsburgh game, especially in the second half, that he was. And, it just seems like there seems to be some resistance here from allowing him to be that guy because of some fear of turnover. And if you hear Kevin Stefanski talk, I'm not making this up. This is a guy who does not openly talks about how much he hates turnovers. And for a coach, is a normal thing, but he kind of fixates on it. And I don't know if that's the best thing for this team. You can tell by how he coaches and everything else. That's something that he has to overcome. Now, I don't want to sound doom and gloom. These are issues. Issues do exist with people, with players and coaches and everything else. But you have young players. You have young coaches. So hopefully these are issues that they can identify and adjust, right? That's the hope. That's why you hire a young coach, because they're not so set in their ways. They haven't been a head coach for 20 years that they're going to keep repeating the same mistakes like a Marty Schottenheimer did back when he was in the NFL, right? Where he had so much success, but also so much failure that he kind of had to stick to his ways. The hope here with Kevin Stefanski is that he identifies that sometimes he has the urge to be a little bit too protective of the football to the point to where it hurts the team, and that he can relax and let some of his playmakers just make plays. And sure, it's going to be a little bit more risky, but the reward's going to be a lot greater. But we'll see. That's just what I think. But thank you for letting me know what you think. Thank you for asking questions for Q&A. But again, guys, thank you for watching. Have a great day. Have a good night.